Can't imagine a better way to celebrate this Vijayadasami or Vidyarambam day than talking about a book on a real beautiful story of a teacher Joff and student Steve. By the way, in India, Vijayadasami or Dasara is one of the most celebrated festivals seeking knowledge and wisdom and a day to start learning something new. Hello everyone. Stumbled upon The Calculus of Friendship written by Steven Strogatz, a popular mathematician from Cornell University. This book is one of its kinds which touches a nerve, leading the readers spellbound. Importantly, making one realize and reassuring the importance of teachers. It could be your school teacher or university teacher or your music teacher, and how they influence us knowingly or unknowingly. In this book, Steve has written about the letter correspondences in an elegant and beautiful way with intertwining mathematical concepts and also making it as a simply jolly ride through of lucid explanations. Interestingly, this letter communication has happened for about 30 years between Steve and his high school teacher, Mr. Don Joffrey. To give a quick intro, Don Joffrey, a high school calculus teacher, had his own inimitable style of teaching maths to his students that actually made him stood apart from a conventional teacher. He had a way of celebrating his former students, praising them like Olympian stars as math gods and so on. The frequency of letter correspondences between Steve and Geoff was non-linear. That is, during the initial stages it was less, but when Steve became a full-time academic, he started writing more often, and then later again there was a regression due to work pressure. But interestingly, Geoff kept writing letters to Steve immaterial if he received a reply or not, and he was so empathetic. Guess that has to be one of the most important tribes that a teacher should have by nature, if not, at least should imbibe. Well, this book is totally a multi-dimensional one, giving facts as such without adding colors. And on another dimension, it traverses how two like-minded people can be so mathematically expressive without getting much into personal stuff. Then, on a different revealing moment, how Steve wants to go and meet his teacher after reading his letter dated 2004, which is actually a bit emotional one. Then Steve makes a mention about how calculus emerged, that is Newton's sparkling invention flux ions during 1665. At this juncture, I think it is so relevant to mention about the Great Plague of London, as we are currently facing a similar such pandemic, the coronavirus. During 1665-1666, Newton began to think of the rate of change of varying quantities such as length, area, volume, distance, and then he started linking two problems, that is infinite series and rates of change. And unfortunately, due to plague, since universities were closed, Newton went home to live and think, which led to the most productive mathematical discoveries, which included the binomial theorem, the calculus, the law of gravitation, and the nature of colors. Calculus, to put it simply, it is a study of change. If it's rate of change of a quantity, then it is differential calculus, and if it is summation, it's integral calculus. So in this book, all along we could see mathematical change or transformation that evolved between a teacher and a student over 30 years, entwining various aspects of calculus, its variations, complex variables, differential equations, discrete mathematics, Fourier series, geometry, probability, and trigonometry. How lucky must be Steve and Geoff? Well, I'm planning to take a journey of this book year-wise. Let's travel back to 1974-75 and the conversations then. Both Steve and Geoff have been mutually admiring each other as heroes. Steve literally looked at Geoff as Lee Marvin, whereas Geoff watches Steve with all awe and happiness. Steve mentions about how Geoff used to blend with nature and uses that for posing mathematical problems and solving them. Now on to the maths part. During this year, they exchanged problems on continuity functions, spiral paths, Fibonacci sequence, and Steve amuses how Geoff sprinkles the ideas quite unconventional. The problems they discussed didn't have any pattern. It was purely based on random equations that they stumble upon either in their classrooms with their students or could be otherwise too. Now, if we look into the continuity function and Joff's style of simplicity, we know as for a function f of x to be continuous at a point x is equal to y, if for all epsilon greater than 0, there exists a delta which is greater than 0, such that the distance of x to y being smaller than delta implies the distance of its functions f of x and f of y to be smaller than epsilon 2. Joff, a teacher who does things differently, didn't even try to explain the delta and epsilon. Instead, he made it simple by saying if you could draw a graph without lifting your pencil from the paper, then it is a continuous function. Oh wow, that's really easy to comprehend intuitively. Next comes a famous goat problem. A goat is tethered to a tree by a long rope. The animal pulls a rope taut and tries to walk away from the tree but ends up wrapping itself around the tree in a tighter and tighter spiral. How would you define this mathematically? One can imagine winding or unwinding a string strewn around your finger or a coil around a center point. When it is wound or uncoiled, the string or wire takes a shape of an involute of a circle, and if one is keen to know the arc length, it is a product of half the radius and square of parametric angle in radians. Couple of practical examples one can think of is in cogwheels and the main spring in your watch. The third concept was about Fibonacci series. As we know, the sequence starts with the numbers 0 and 1, and after that each number is a sum of the two before it. Joff, again in his usual unconventional way, had to stop during one of his lectures and speak about his proud student Williams for coming up with a formula to get the nth number in the series as shown here, but which could be arrived by number of means. We are not going to get into that. So finally, Steve winds up 1974-75's conversations stating, however he tried to pull out, he was actually winding up closer and closer to his teacher Joff all these years, just like the goat tethered to the tree. Thanks all for your time. See you with another anecdote from the book.